All right, welcome to another edition of Fox 10 Talks Sports. That's right, we're talking about the fun stuff, sports, and plenty to talk about right about now as we got the NFL draft 24 hours away. This is a day that can make or break a franchise when you think about it, right? I mean, you got kids that also are waiting their whole lives for this day. The Arizona Cardinals, of course, one of the teams that will be on the clock in round number one. The Cardinals have the 16th pick in round one. And boy, you could get some talent right at that spot. The new GM Monty Ford and the head coach Jonathan Gannon have done a great job so far. They've got 2 years in. They've made some pretty good draft picks, right? Paris Johnson, Marvin Harrison Jr. Their top picks the last 2 years, both offense, right? And it was no surprise to see them go with offensive line. You know, Monty Ford likes to win in the trenches. He had that kind of MO when he was with Tennessee and New England. And really, that's what wins football games. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, look at what they did in the Super Bowl, right? Poor, Patrick Mahomes was running for his life. He was on his back the entire time, with proving that, no matter how good you are at quarterback, you can't throw when you're on your back, right? So if you can get pressure on the quarterback and protect your quarterback at the same time, that's a remedy for success, right? And of course, a lot of work goes in to the draft. And it's so interesting to see, what happens when you finally get on the clock. And when you're a team like the Cardinals that are now picking 16th as opposed to in the top 10, you have to wait to see how the draft board falls to you, right? You got to wait and see what happens with the picks in front of you. And that's where it kind of starts getting tricky if you're a guy like Monty Ford, because you're not sure. You have to have all these different scenarios, right? Well, if this guy's available, then we're going to take this guy. But if he's not, what do we do? Do we trade up to try to get him if we think he's going to go? Or if we have several guys that we like at 16, maybe trade down and get some more picks and then still get one of the guys that we had high on our board, right? And when you get those extra picks, it's kind of like, get an extra lottery ticket, because the more chances you get to pick, the more chances you get to draft a guy that's a game changer. And there's several game changers in this draft, right? And of course, there's several needs for the Arizona Cardinals as well. As I mentioned, I still think they need help on both lines, the offensive line and the D line. Of course, in the offseason, they made several decisions, several moves that have addressed those needs, right? They got the kid from Cleveland. They got Tomlinson as a nose tackle that can kind of plug the middle. Then they went out and got Josh Sweat, who was absolutely fantastic in the Super Bowl. You saw him all over Patrick Mahomes. He's an edge rusher. He's a guy that gets to the quarterback, and that's what Jonathan Gannon loved. And, of course, Jonathan Gannon has some history with Josh Sweat. He was with Philadelphia before he came to the Arizona Cardinals. But the Cardinals not only went out and got guys, they kept guys, right? They kept guys that they think that can contribute this year. Baron Browning being one of them, a guy they went and got out in a trade with the Denver Broncos, another guy that gets to the quarterback. He played 4 or 5 games, and you saw he could contribute, right? So they say, look, let's extend this guy and keep him here. Then on the offensive side of the football, Trey McBride, who I think was a very interesting draft pick, because at the time, the Cardinals really didn't need a tight end. They had other needs that were bigger than tight end, but you got to give them credit. At the time, they took the best player available, and that's what a lot of teams do. And they always say that if you reach for a guy to fill a particular need, that's not how you win, because then you're missing out on guys that, could be game changers down the road, like Trey McBride, who's arguably the best tight end in football. He's obviously the highest paid tight end in football. That's what the Cardinals did. They extended him. They kept him here. And it made sense, because he's been absolutely fantastic. And when you got a young receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. who's still finding his way, you want that security blanket. You want that outlet if you're Kyler Murray. And Marvin Harrison Jr. had his ups and downs. They called him Maserati Marv. At times, it was like Mazda Miata Marv, right? It was like, well, why are you going to drive the Maserati? Let this guy go, And he, when you look at the overall numbers for his rookie year, not that bad when you compare him to his own father, right, Marvin Harrison, and then his the guy that he's trying to replace here, Larry Fitzgerald. They had comparable, rookie seasons. So I think there's hope out there for Marvin Harrison. He's gonna, get better as he goes on. The one thing for sure, the kid works hard, right? And one guy that knows a lot about football is Howard Balzer. I've been talking to that guy, I don't know for how long now. I've been following him I remember I used to read Howard Balzer. He's with CardsWire, USAToday.com. And I used to talk about him and read his stuff. But now we've got my producer Mark Malerich also coming in. This guy's been covering this thing.
Round pick, Richard.
Yeah, my first round pick. Yeah, you got Howard Balzer maybe on line one. We'll try to get him later.
Howard was selected.
Yeah, Howard
was selected by a different team. So we don't have Howard right now.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get him later. Maybe we won't. We'll definitely talk to him, tomorrow or throughout the week as well, because this guy has been dialed in with the Arizona Cardinals for sure. Mark Malerich, my producer's been dialed in. That's for sure. We've covered I don't know how many drafts now.
20 plus.
I know. It's been crazy to see how the drafts have gone. And it's funny, like I remember when they could have drafted Terrell Suggs, right? You see T Sizzle, right?
Yep.
And then they ended up getting,
Bryant Johnson, Calvin Pace, the trade down that nobody in Arizona liked.
But what did they do in round 2? Anquan Bolden. That turned out to be a pretty good pick. And it's funny because this is why I don't know if I could be a GM, because I was like, Anquan Bolden, the guy with the bum knee, because he was hurt. And that's why I think he dropped to the second round. But the Cardinals ended up getting him, and then he ended up being
fantastic. Do you remember Anquan Bolden's rookie season, that first game against
Detroit?
Game, the
Lions. Yes.
2 touchdowns, over 200 yards receiving. Like, well, wait a minute, maybe he's the guy that's going to be the franchise player.
Yeah.
But obviously Anquan, he's a Hall of Famer. His career was amazing. But, hearing you talk about the draft, isn't it nice that we're talking about the pick at 16 and not 2 for the Cardinals? It's showing progress.
Right. It just shows that they're trending in the right direction. Good problems to have. And now we're really going to get to see what GM Monty Ossenfort can do, because this is where you really got to be on your game. And it's been crazy to see him, Monty Ossenfort, work the draft the way he has. He's been fantastic. He likes to trade down, I've noticed. He likes to stockpile picks, and it makes sense, right? The more picks you have, the more chances you have to hit. And so far, he's done a good job in drafting in the first round. Paris Johnson, Darius Robinson, that's how he got that second pick when he traded down and still got Paris Johnson. We'll see. The jury's still out to see what he does.
We may be dating ourselves here, but do you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Yeah, of course.
You get to a certain page. It's like, if you go to this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I feel like Monty either wrote the book or he knows the answers to every adventure.
Right.
And he's like, okay, well, if I want to go here and move down, this is what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to move up and I'm going to get Paris Johnson.
Right.
Or if I go this way, I'm going to move all the way down.
Yeah.
And then maybe get a secondary lineman or something like that. But it seems like you talk about preparation and just being in control. We talked about the Suns last week and just how dysfunctional it is right now.
Right.
This organization has stability. They have a direction. I think if you're a fan of the Cardinals, you realize, okay, we see the plan, we see the blueprint, we see what they're building. And I think that's got to be very comforting for a fan that at 16, they're not going to screw it up.
Right. It's funny because you say, I think we're aging ourselves by what we're talking about. No, we don't need to say anything. They just, all we have to do is show this part right here, show a little bit of your beard.
That's
and
it.
Then we got the gray in there. And it's funny to see, how the draft has changed over the years. Because I remember when I first started watching the draft, it was like, on ESPN, one of the, alternate channels, no big deal. Now it's a major production. I've had a chance to actually go to a couple of the NFL drafts when Josh Rosen was picked. Remember that? He was the most NFL-ready quarterback out there.
That's it.
But I was also in Nashville when Kyler Murray got drafted. And it was funny. I used to live in Old Hickory, Tennessee. Shout out to Rocky Top. I worked at the airport there. And I used to, I was trying to, find my way in college before I ended up joining the Army Reserves. Got my Uncle Sam to pay for the last 2 years of college. But I remember thinking, like, if somebody would have told me when I was driving the cart at the airport, watch the cart, ma'am, that, hey, you're going to be back one day and you're going to interview the number 1 pick in the NFL draft in Kyler Murray, years later, I'd be like, man, I think you're crazy. But it was a cool moment, and it was cool to see, Kyler Murray come out in that great Gatsby suit and then see how he's grown and matured over the years. And we'll see what kind of weapons he's going to get in round 1 or 2. What do you think the Cardinals are going to do at 16?
Well, that's the thing, though, is if you want to get another weapon, you could go with Golden from Texas.
Right.
You could go with McMillan from U of A.
Uh-huh.
Those are the 2 receivers that are probably penciled in the first round that have that talent. You've got Marvin. And yesterday, Michael Wilson was saying that Marvin Harrison looks like he got bigger.
He does.
And not like slow big, like a bodybuilder, but more like filled out, like ready to handle the punishment. I think about, remember when Michael Jordan was going against the bad boy Pistons?
Yeah.
He was skinny. He was getting beat up all the time. He said, you know what? I'm going to hit the weight room.
Right.
And then I'm going to beat you guys. And I think this is going to be a big step for Marvin. Well, now if you get another weapon, you got Trey McBride, you got James Conner in the backfield, maybe you get an offensive lineman in the second round. you got nothing to worry about on offense. I think they'd be just fine.
Yeah, if you're playing PlayStation, you need
Yeah,
defense, though, man.
yeah,
I want to
yeah.
get the guy that can get to the quarterback. Somebody from Georgia, the linebacker from Georgia. I also like the defensive tackle from Oregon. Guys, you got to have defense, and it's funny because the last two drafts, the top pick has been offense. So we'll see what I think he still might trade down. It all depends on how the draft board falls to them.
And no offense to Steve Keim, but when you drafted Hassan Reddick out of Temple and you drafted Zaven Collins out of Tulsa,
right?
And he's panned out,
right?
But that was kind of like it's almost like the 5,000 parlay. You're like, this is gonna hit,
right? But Hassan Reddick knocked the head off the doll. Remember that?
But then you move on a position. Isaiah Simmons, same thing. You're like, oh,
the unicorn.
This guy is
amazing. Should have got a line there. Well,
he can run fast.
Yeah.
Well, but can he tackle? Can he think the game? And it's almost like you think about basketball players or even like the Patriots. Bill Belichick wasn't going to get the A+ player. He was going to get the B- player who could think the game, anticipate the game, and do the right thing on the field. And you get 11 of those guys working together, you're going to win games.
Right.
You don't need the special star backer. Was that what it was? Star backer?
And what's funny is you talk about that guys that are smart, right? And that's kind of been what the Cardinals have been doing, drafting team leaders, team captains, smart players. And when you mention those criteria, you think of Cam Scatterboo. And we got to talk about where you think he's going to go. Projections are third or fourth round. Some people, say, why so low? Well, it all depends on, how the draft works out. And this draft is running back heavy, but I think whoever drafts him is going to get a gem of a player.
And I think everyone here would love to see Cam Scatterboo.
Oh, I know.
They would. But the team that I think he'd be perfect with is the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah.
I think of my buddy John, San Diego
Those
Superchargers. Okay, so we're the LA Chargers.
Now we're really aging ourselves.
But yeah, exactly. But Jim Harbaugh, running game, he's almost like Austin Eckler a little bit, but bigger, stronger.
Right.
Catch the ball out of the backfield, run between the tackles, and he doesn't need to be a starter.
I know.
He's a third down back. You could put him in the slot. You saw what he did in the bowl game. One-hand catch down the field in coverage. I mean,
Wildcat. Why not?
Yeah, he could do everything, and I think whoever gets him, it's just going to be a matter of, okay, if they take him in the second round, oh, wait a second, that's a reach. He's not worth that. But if you get him in the fifth round and he plays like a second rounder, that's the path I see him on.
Yeah, and then if you see him go like to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that's gritty-gutty, a market that's, blue collar, he would be a fan favorite for that. That's for sure. We got about 20 seconds. And so you think he's going to go to the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
I say he's either going to be the Steelers or, unfortunately, the San Francisco 49ers. At least we'll get to see him play twice a year.